Dad moves in soon-to-be bride, and she gets pregnant and demands I leave the house because she needs my room. I tell her, lady, I own the house. Sup, Reddit. My dad's gold-digging fiancée moved in with her two devil spawn. After she announced her pregnancy, she tried to kick me out of my own house. Her smirk disappeared when I told her I owned the place. What followed was an absolute show. Here's what went down. So, this whole saga started about 9 years ago when my mom died from cancer. I, 21 male, was 12. Dad was a wreck, and nobody knew what the hell to do with me. Luckily for everyone involved, my grandparents lived just outside the city on this decent chunk of land with a house that had seen better days, but still had good bones. After Mom passed, it just made sense for me to stay put with the grandparents. Dad would come home on weekends, holidays, whatever. The house itself is solid, 4 bedrooms, a couple of bathrooms, a big kitchen, sitting on about 3 acres of land that backs up to some woods. But here's where Dad started showing his true colors. Even as a kid, I noticed he had this thing about control. Everything had to be done his way, on his timeline, with his approval. He'd show up on weekends and immediately start rearranging things, telling Grandpa how to maintain the property properly, and making decisions about my life without asking anyone. My best friend Ian lived about 10 minutes down the road, so I wasn't completely isolated. Kid's been my ride or die since we were building forts in those backwoods. Here's where it gets interesting, though. My mom was an only child. I'm an only child. When Grandma and Grandpa started declining a few years back, guess who's the only name on the will? That's right. Yours truly inherited the whole damn operation when Grandpa died: house, land, Grandpa's beat-to-hell pickup truck that somehow still runs, and a decent chunk of change they'd been sitting on. Dad used Mom's life insurance to renovate parts of the house over the years. But here's the thing, he acted like he was doing me some huge favor, like I should be grateful he was investing in the place. I found out about the inheritance when the lawyer called me after Grandpa's funeral. Dad was standing right there when I took that call. The look on his face when he realized I owned the house we were all living in, not embarrassment or guilt, more like irritation, like I just complicated his life by existing. Ian was there that day helping me sort through Grandpa's tools. When Dad walked away after that phone call, Ian just looked at me and said, "So, you own the house now?" Damn, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward. But we never discussed it. Dad just pretended it never happened and kept acting like he was the man of the house, making all the decisions, controlling everything from what we watched on TV to when I was allowed to have friends over. About 2 years after Mom died, Dad started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just random coffee dates and dinner meetups. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, and he drops this bomb: he's got a serious girlfriend, a 30-year-old preschool teacher named Jennifer, who comes with 2 kids under 10 and enough emotional baggage to stock a therapy practice. Jennifer's got this whole young professional mom aesthetic going on, drives a white SUV that's always spotless, wears those athleisure outfits, and has opinions about organic food that she'll share whether you ask or not. Her kids, Hunter and Paisley, because of course their names sound like a country club membership roster, are these perfectly groomed little sociopaths. The first time Dad brought her to the house, she did this thing where she walked around taking mental notes, like, "This needs work, and that needs replacing," notes. I caught her opening cabinets and checking expiration dates on stuff in the pantry. "Your grandmother had such interesting taste," she said, running her finger along the vintage wallpaper. "It's so authentic, very lived in." The way she said lived in made it sound like a polite way of saying trashy, but Dad just ate it up. "Jennifer has such great design sense," he said, like she just complimented the Sistine Chapel. "She's got so many ideas for improvements." Her kids were even worse than she was. Hunter, who's maybe 8, spent the entire visit touching everything he wasn't supposed to touch while maintaining perfect eye contact. Paisley, the 6-year-old, accidentally knocked over Grandma's favorite plant and then looked at me like it was my fault for putting it where she could reach it. When I mentioned the plant, Jennifer just laughed. "Oh, kids will be kids. They're just excited to be in such a big house. They're not used to having so much space to explore." Ian came by that evening and caught the tail end of their visit. After they left, he looked around the living room where Jennifer had repositioned some of Grandma's throw pillows. "Well, she seems fun," he said. "Nothing says, I'm definitely not planning to redecorate your entire life like rearranging furniture on the first visit." But Dad was smitten, started spending more money on dates, bought new clothes, got his teeth whitened, classic midlife crisis stuff, except instead of buying a motorcycle, he'd found himself a ready-made family that came with built-in validation. Jennifer played it perfectly, asking his opinion on everything, deferring to his wisdom, letting him feel like the big, strong provider. 3 months in, she's practically moved in. Her stuff starts showing up in Dad's bathroom. Her car is in the driveway more than it's at her apartment. Hunter and Paisley have claimed the guest room like they're planning to stay forever. And the kids, Jesus Christ, the kids, they went from perfectly behaved little angels to absolute demons the second they got comfortable. Hunter would accidentally break my stuff and then act confused when I got mad. Paisley would go through my room when I wasn't home and mess with my things, then deny everything when confronted. Whenever I complained, Jennifer would give me this wounded look and suggest that maybe I wasn't used to having kids around. Dad naturally took her side every time, telling me, they're just kids, and to cut them some slack. By month 4, she wasn't even pretending anymore. She'd gone from grateful guest to woman of the house faster than you could say gold digger. It started small, rearranging the living room furniture while Dad was at work, then acting like it had always been that way, replacing Grandma's dish towels with her own organic cotton ones, throwing away food she didn't approve of and replacing it with expensive organic alternatives. But the real power move was how she started treating me like I was some deadbeat nephew who'd overstayed his welcome. She started making comments about my music being too loud after 9 p.m. because the children needed their sleep, and some of us had real jobs in the morning. "Sweetie, could you try to keep your music down after 9 p.m., she asked one Tuesday night while I was studying. "The children need their sleep, and some of us have real jobs in the morning." Like being a college student in my own house was somehow less legitimate than teaching finger painting to toddlers. Dad just nodded along like this was perfectly reasonable. "She's right, son. We need to be considerate of everyone living here." Her kids got worse, too. Hunter figured out which buttons to push and started doing it. He'd wait until I was on the phone or in the middle of something important, then start making noise or asking me stupid questions. One day, he asked why I didn't have a girlfriend. When I told him to mind his own business, he informed me that his mom said it was because I lived with my dad like a loser. "Your mom says a lot of things," I told him. "Most of them are bullshit." "I'm telling," he yelled and ran off to find Jennifer. 5 minutes later, Dad's in my room giving me the lecture about being a good role model and watching my language around the children. Jennifer stood behind him with this wounded expression that would have won her an Oscar, explaining how inappropriate it was for me to use that kind of language with Hunter. Dad's face went red, and he demanded I apologize. "For what?" I asked. "For telling the truth. For being disrespectful to Jennifer and setting a bad example for the kids," he said. I told him I wasn't apologizing for anything. That's when Jennifer's mask slipped for just a second. She commented how maybe it was time I started acting like part of the family instead of some entitled teenager. That night, I found Paisley in my room again, this time going through my desk drawers. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She looked up at me with those dead shark eyes kids get when they're planning something evil. "Mommy said I could look for paper for my art project. Mommy doesn't get to give permission for my room. Get out." "You're mean," she said, but she was smiling when she said it. "Mommy says you're just jealous because Daddy loves us more now." I escorted her out and locked my door. This kid was repeating stuff her mother had said about me. Jennifer was literally poisoning her kids against me. The final straw came that Sunday when I came home from Ian's to find Jennifer had rearranged my room. My desk was in a different corner. My posters had been taken down, and my bed was made with different sheets. "What the hell are you doing?" I said when I found her in the hallway. "Language," she said automatically. "I was just organizing things a bit. Your room was starting to affect the energy of the whole house. You went into my room without permission and moved my stuff around. I knocked, but you weren't home. I thought you wouldn't mind. It looks so much better now, don't you think?" Dad appeared from the kitchen like he'd been waiting for this conversation. "What's the problem?" She was trying to help. "Maybe you should be grateful instead of starting arguments." When I said she went through my personal space without asking, Jennifer jumped in with that preschool teacher voice, explaining that this was a shared living space, and we all needed to be considerate of each other. My room was visible from the hallway, and frankly, it was bringing down the whole energy of the house. I pointed out that it was my room. Dad's jaw tightened. "We all live here, and we all need to contribute to making it a pleasant environment." Jennifer stepped forward with this wounded expression, saying she was just trying to help make this place feel more like a home for everyone. She was sorry if I felt like she overstepped, but maybe we could work together to find solutions that work for the whole family. I told her I didn't want her help. I wanted her to stay out of my room and stop moving my stuff around. "Watch your tongue, kid," Dad demanded. "No, you people better mind your business and stop thinking you run this place. Enough. You need to apologize to her now." I looked at Jennifer, who was standing there with this perfect victim expression, waiting for me to fold. Then I looked at Dad, who clearly expected me to back down and play along. "No. What did you just say?" I said, "No, I'm not apologizing for being upset." Dad's face went purple. I was being completely unreasonable. Jennifer was trying to build a life here, and I was acting like a spoiled brat. Jennifer put her hand on his arm in this supportive gesture and suggested, "Maybe we should all take a step back and cool off. I never meant to cause problems. I just want us all to be happy together." She was good at playing the peacemaker while Dad did her dirty work. I told them I was going to Ian's and walked out. When I got back that night, I found a note on my door: "House rules for respectful cohabitation," with a list of expectations, including 24-hour notice before having guests over, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and shared responsibility for common areas. 3 weeks later, I'm minding my own business on a Tuesday night, trying to write a paper for my class. Dad's been home for exactly 2 hours, and she's already got him moving furniture around because the flow isn't right. They disappear into his room for about an hour, then call me into the living room for a family meeting. I'm thinking maybe they're finally going to announce they're moving in together officially. Boy, was I wrong. Jennifer delivers the news like she just announced she'd been crowned Miss Universe. I'm pregnant. Dad's beaming like he just won the lottery. Jennifer's glowing with this smug satisfaction that screams, "I've locked this down." Hunter and Paisley are sitting there like they've been coached on the appropriate response. And I'm thinking, well, there goes the neighborhood. That's great. Congratulations. But Jennifer's not done. She's got this whole speech prepared, delivered with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth hurt and the entitlement of someone who thinks she just won the property lottery. "We've been talking about the future," she starts. "And I can already tell this isn't going to be good. With the baby coming, we're going to need to make some major changes around here: more space, better organization, a proper nursery, adult living arrangements." Dad's nodding along. "So, we were thinking maybe it's time for you to experience some independence. You know, like other people your age living as adults." Dad jumps in with the confidence of a man who thinks he runs the place. "Most people your age have moved out. It's time you have some responsibility." "You want me to move out?" I asked. Jennifer jumped in with this practiced answer. "There's this wonderful apartment I have in the city. I don't go there anymore since I'm spending most of my time here. You know, I can rent it to you at a significant discount, way below market rate. When I ask how much of a discount, she explains that market rate for that area is about $1,500, but she'd only charge me $1,200. Really a steal for someone in your situation. And what happens to this place? Well, Jennifer's got great ideas for making it more functional for a growing family. The baby will need a nursery, and the kids need proper rooms. Your room would be the perfect nursery space. My room. The room I've lived in since I was 12. But wait, there's more. Also, Jennifer continued, my mother has agreed to move in temporarily to help with the baby. She'll need the guest room. I look at Dad, waiting for him to say something. Anything? Nope. He's just sitting there nodding along to everything she says. So, I decided to play along to see how far they'll go. That's interesting. I'll think about it. Jennifer's smile gets a lot tighter. Great, but you know, waiting too long would be limiting everyone involved, so think fast. Okay. I texted Ian as soon as they went back to their room about needing an emergency drink run. He showed up 20 minutes later, took one look at my face. Dude, you look like someone just shat in your cereal. Tell me about it. I told him everything. Classic, he said. Nothing says family values like kicking the owner to make room for grandma. 2 weeks after the pregnancy announcement, I came home from my afternoon classes to find Jennifer in my room with cardboard boxes, packing up my stuff like I'd already agreed to move out. Not just standing in the doorway this time, actually in my room, going through my closet, wrapping up my mom's pictures in newspaper, and boxing up books like she was preparing for a yard sale. When I asked what the heck she was doing, she looked up with this bright smile, like I just walked in on her organizing a charity drive. Hi, sweetie. I'm just helping you get started with packing. Your father and I decided it would be better to get you moved sooner rather than later. So, I thought I'd give you a head start. My father and I decided. Nobody asked me what I decided. She kept that sickeningly sweet tone. Well, honey, you've had 2 weeks to think about it. And really, what's there to think about? This is obviously the best solution for everyone. She held up one of my mom's framed pictures like she was examining it for flaws. Besides, some of this stuff probably needs to be updated anyway. You can't hold on to childhood things forever. Put that down and get out of my room now. Now, she said in that condescending preschool teacher voice, there's no need to be unpleasant. I'm trying to help you transition to adult living. This is exciting. Your own place. Real independence. When I repeated my demand for her to get out, Jennifer sat down the picture and straightened up. For the first time since I'd met her, the mask completely dropped. Listen, little boy, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm pregnant with your father's child. This house needs to work for a real family, not some overgrown teenager who can't handle the idea of growing up. You can either pack your stuff like an adult, or I can have your father explain to you why this isn't negotiable anymore. This isn't your house. You don't get to pack my stuff. Actually, she said, picking up another box and continuing like I hadn't spoken, your father and I have discussed this extensively. We've already paid the deposit on the apartment, and you're moving out this weekend. The movers come Monday to pick up your things. Movers. They'd hired movers for my stuff without asking me. When I said they couldn't do this, she told me they already did. The lease is signed. The deposit is paid. And frankly, you should be grateful we're handling all the logistics for you. Most parents would make their children figure this out on their own. That's when Dad walked in, and I could tell from his expression that he knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't Jennifer going rogue. This was their plan. Dad, what the hell is this? We decided it's better to just rip the band-aid off. You've been dragging your feet on this decision, so we made it for you. You made it for me. Dad used that patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. Look, this is happening whether you like it or not. You can either be mature about it and work with us, or you can throw a tantrum like a child. But either way, you're moving out this weekend. I looked between them, Dad standing there like he was delivering some tough love life lesson, Jennifer smirking behind him like she just won the lottery. And they'd obviously planned this whole thing. When I asked what would happen if I refused, Dad's face went hard. Then they'd pack my stuff for me and put it in storage. I was an adult now, and it was time I started acting like one. This house was for families, not overgrown kids who couldn't handle change. Overgrown kids. My own father called me an overgrown kid for not wanting to be evicted from my own house. Jennifer helpfully added that I had until Sunday. The cleaning lady needed time to prepare the room for the nursery furniture delivery. I pulled out my phone and started recording, asking them to say that again about moving me out of my house. Dad's face went red, and he told me to put that away. This is a family discussion, not some social media drama. I kept recording and asked him to clarify. They were evicting me from this house, the house that belongs to me. Jennifer snapped that it belonged to this family, and families make decisions together. I didn't get to hold everyone hostage because of some paperwork technicality. Paperwork technicality. Property ownership was a paperwork technicality. Dad, whose name is on the deed? Pure awkward silence. While Dad realized he'd never actually checked the paperwork from when Grandpa died. When he finally admitted that legally, yes, the house was in my name, but started to say, but, I cut him off. There was no but. Legally, this was my house, and he just told me he was evicting me from my own property. That's when Jennifer finally understood what was happening, and her face went through about 6 different emotions before settling on barely controlled panic. That can't be right, she said slowly. You're just a student. This student does. I showed her the phone screen. Inherited it from my grandparents when they died. House, land, everything. All mine. Jennifer sat down hard on my bed, still holding one of my boxed-up books. But your father, he pays for everything. Utilities, upkeep. Yeah. On my property, like a tenant. He renovated this place with my mom's life insurance money to improve my house. The color drained from her face as she realized her entire plan had just imploded. So, when you decided to evict me from my own house and turn my bedroom into your nursery without asking, yeah, that's not going to fly. Dad was quiet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice had that dangerous edge it got when he was really pissed off. Fine, he said. It's your house. But I was still 21 years old, and I was still his son, and I was still going to do what he told me to do. Actually, no, I wasn't. He said we'd see about that and walked out. Jennifer stayed sitting on my bed, staring at the boxes of my stuff she'd been packing like they were evidence of a crime. She said, "This is insane. I couldn't just. This isn't how families work." You're right. Families don't usually steal each other's houses. She looked up at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've just done. I am pregnant, and we need the house more than you do. Maybe you should have asked nicely. This isn't over. Good luck with that. I texted Ian immediately about deploying the nuclear option. They tried to pack my stuff without permission. His response came back in seconds, asking how they took the property ownership revelation. About as well as you'd expect, I told him. Dad's having an alpha male meltdown. And Jennifer looks like she just watched her master plan burn to the ground. After the attempted forced eviction, I spent the weekend doing research, not homework, the kind of research that would help me figure out exactly how to make these people's lives as miserable as they tried to make mine. Ian came over Saturday morning with coffee and his laptop for what he called war council time. All right, what's the plan? I told him the plan. I was evicting them. Both of them. Even your dad? Especially my dad. He made his choice when he tried to force me out of my own house. Ian grinned. Ruthless. I like it. What do you need? We spent the morning researching tenant rights, eviction procedures, and property law. Turns out, when you let people establish residency in your house, which Dad and Jennifer had definitely done, getting them out requires proper legal channels. But when you own the property, and they're not on any lease, you've got most of the power. Ian found the relevant laws. In this state, you need to give 30 days written notice for month-to-month tenants. But if they're not paying rent, and there's no lease agreement, it's considered tenancy at will, and you can terminate it with notice. 30 days notice. But here was the fun part: if they refused to leave after notice, I could file for eviction and have them legally removed. When I asked about damages, like if they'd been living there rent-free, Ian found the beautiful part. I could sue for fair market rent for the entire time they'd been there without a lease, plus any damages to the property. I calculated quickly. Dad had been living there rent-free for 9 years. Jennifer and her kids for about 6 months at market rates for a 4-bedroom house in our area. We were talking about serious money. Dad would owe me about $200,000 in back rent. Jennifer would owe about $15,000 just for the time she'd been there. Ian whistled. That's some expensive house playing. Monday morning, I went to the courthouse and filed the paperwork. Tuesday, I went to a lawyer to make sure I was doing everything by the book. Wednesday, I had the eviction notices printed up on official letterhead. Thursday evening, I waited for them both to be home, then called a family meeting in the living room. We need to talk, I said, setting the folder of legal documents on the coffee table. Dad was still in his post-superiority mode. If this is about your attitude problem, I don't want to hear it. You've been acting like a spoiled brat, and it needs to stop. Actually, this is about your housing situation. Jennifer was sitting next to him, one hand on her belly like she was protecting the baby from my bad vibes. What about our housing situation? I opened the folder and pulled out the eviction notices. You're both being evicted. 30 days notice, effective immediately. The silence that followed was beautiful. Dad picked up his notice and read it like it was written in Sumerian. What the hell is this? It's an eviction notice. You have 30 days to find alternative housing and vacate the premises. He exploded. You can't do this. I'm your father, you little, watch me. Jennifer screamed, that's illegal. You can't kick out a pregnant woman. Actually, I can. But we don't pay rent, she said, like that was some kind of gotcha. Exactly. They were tenants at will, which meant they had even fewer rights than people with leases. Dad stood up, and I could see that vein in his forehead. That meant he was about to lose it completely. He called this the most ungrateful, disrespectful thing I'd ever done after everything he'd sacrificed for me. He went off about how he raised me, put money into this place, and had been taking care of everything, and now he could take care of his own housing like every other adult on the planet. Jennifer was reading through the notice again, and I could see the exact moment she found the part about back rent. She asked what this was about. Owed compensation for unlawful occupancy. That was the lawsuit I was filing for the rent they should have been paying this whole time. Fair market value for a 4-bedroom house, calculated monthly for the duration of their unauthorized residency. When Dad asked how much, I told him, for him, about $200,000, for Jennifer and her kids, $15,000 and counting. The color drained from both their faces. Jennifer whispered, "You can't be serious." Dead serious. But I wasn't completely heartless. They could avoid the lawsuit by vacating within 30 days and signing an agreement not to pursue any claims against the property. Dad sat back down hard and asked about $200,000. That's what it cost to live in a house like this for 9 years. Who knew? Jennifer's voice got shrill, saying this was insane. They were going to be homeless. She was pregnant. Not my problem. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my house. Dad was quiet for a long time, staring at the eviction notice like it might change if he looked at it hard enough. When he finally asked where they were supposed to go, I suggested, anywhere but here. Jennifer had that apartment, right? The one she was so eager to rent to me. That's a one-bedroom, she said. We can't fit 3 adults and 2 kids in a one-bedroom apartment. 3 adults? I asked her. My father and her mother, she explained. I laughed. Oh, she thought her mother was still invited to this party. That's adorable. Dad said he couldn't do this. He didn't have anywhere to go. All his money was tied up in this place. His money was tied up in my place. And now he knew how it felt to be told he had to leave. Jennifer started crying, the angry, frustrated sobs of someone whose manipulation tactics weren't working anymore. She went on about how unfair this was, how they were building a life together and were going to be a family. But the baby, she wailed. The baby she got pregnant with to lock down my dad. That baby. Her crying stopped instantly, and the look she gave me was pure hatred. You don't know what you're talking about. Really? Let me guess, birth control failure, happy accident, surprise pregnancy that just happened to occur right when you needed to cement your position in the house. Silence. Ian showed up the next morning with donuts and an eating grin, asking how they took their eviction notices. Like you'd expect, I told him. Lots of crying, threats, and disbelief that actions have consequences. Your dad, too? He asked. My dad's having an existential crisis about owing me $200,000 in back rent. Beautiful, he said. Justice is a dish best served with legal paperwork. The next month was magnificent to watch. Dad tried everything, lawyer consultations he couldn't afford to fight, emotional manipulation about being my father and this being our family home, and even attempted bribes about signing the house over to me officially and calling it even. News flash, I already owned the house. Signing it over to me would be like giving me my own birthday present. Jennifer went full scorched earth, called my university to complain about my unstable home environment, called the police to report a domestic disturbance when I asked her to move her car, even tried to call CPS on herself, claiming I was creating an unsafe environment for children, which backfired when they pointed out that maybe she shouldn't have her kids living somewhere she felt unsafe. Finding housing for an unemployed pregnant woman, her 2 kids, a 52-year-old man with mediocre credit, and potentially a grandmother, all on Dad's construction salary, turned out to be harder than they thought. Week 4, Dad suggested maybe they could work out some kind of arrangement. He could pay me rent to stay. Market rate, they could make it official. I said, no. He started to argue, but I cut him off. Nope. You had the chance to treat me with respect and have a conversation like an adult. Instead, you tried to force me out of my own house. Actions have consequences. But I'm your father, he said. Yeah. And you're also the guy who tried to evict me from my own property to make room for your girlfriend's mother. Father of the Year material right there. That's when the real fireworks started. Jennifer filed a complaint claiming I was evicting her because of her pregnancy status. The hearing was beautiful. Jennifer had to explain that she was Dad's girlfriend, had been living there 6 months, had no lease, and paid 0 rent. Then I got to tell the judge how they tried to force me out of my own house and convert my bedroom into a nursery without my permission. The judge basically told her, you can't claim pregnancy discrimination when you're being evicted for trying to illegally evict the actual property owner. Case dismissed. But the Betrayal bomb came during week 5, and you're not going to believe what happened. I was at Ian's place when Dad called, and his voice sounded weird, shaky. We need to talk, he said. About what? You've got 3 days left to move out. About the baby. Something in his tone made me pay attention. What about it? Can you come home? I need to show you something. I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month. He slid a paper across the table. Paternity test results. The baby isn't mine, he said quietly. I stared at the paper. What do you mean? Jennifer had been lying this whole time. How did he find out? She'd wanted him to sign up for better health insurance at work to cover the pregnancy. The insurance company required blood work for pre-existing conditions. They ran some genetic screening panels. Turns out he couldn't be the father. Wrong blood type. So, whose baby was it? Her ex-husband's. Apparently, they were still sleeping together when she started dating Dad. The whole thing was a setup. Where was she now? Upstairs. He'd confronted her this morning. She tried to claim the test was wrong, that maybe it was a mix-up at the lab. Then she tried to say it didn't matter because he'd be a better father than her ex anyway. When that didn't work, she said he was abandoning her and the baby. And how could he be so cruel to throw out a pregnant woman? He told her she had until tonight to get out, or he'd call the police and report her for fraud. She called him a heartless bastard and said this was all my fault for being a selfish little, who couldn't handle having a real family. I almost laughed. Even caught red-handed lying about paternity, she was still blaming me. So, what happens now? I asked. Dad was quiet for a long time. I screwed up bad. I chose a woman I barely knew over my own son. I tried to kick you out of your own house for someone who was lying to me from day one. Yeah, you did. I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to, but I'm hoping maybe we could work something out. I don't have anywhere to go, and I know I don't deserve any help from you, but... No. The word hung in the air between us. You made your choice. You chose her over me. You tried to force me out of my own house. You called me ungrateful and disrespectful for not wanting to be homeless. You don't get to come crawling back now that your gold-digging girlfriend turned out to be exactly what everyone except you could see she was. But I'm your father. I'm your, yeah. And I'm your son. Didn't stop you from trying to evict me. Dad looked down at the paternity test results and said he knew he messed up. He knew he didn't deserve forgiveness, but he was asking anyway. I told Dad if he really wanted to know what I thought. He nodded. I think you're a 52-year-old man who got manipulated by a 30-year-old con artist because you were thinking with your dick instead of your brain. I think you were so desperate to feel young and needed that you ignored every red flag she threw up. And I think when push came to shove, you chose her over your own son. And now that it's all blown up in your face, you want me to forget that you tried to steal my inheritance and kick me out of my own house. He flinched like I'd slapped him. It wasn't like that, he started to say, but I cut him off. It was exactly like that. You just got caught. Dad was quiet for a long time. So what happens now? He asked. Now you move out, as we agreed. That night, Jennifer left. No big scene, no dramatic goodbye. Just packed her stuff and disappeared with her kids. Dad moved out 2 days later, rented a one-bedroom apartment across town, and took only his personal stuff. Left behind all the furniture he'd bought, all the improvements he'd made, everything he'd invested in the house that was never his. Ian came over the day after Dad left, bringing drinks and pizza. He asked, "You'll ever forgive him?" Maybe, but not today. And not because he got caught being an idiot. Fair enough, he said. So, what's the plan now? Finish school, enjoy living in my own house without anyone trying to steal it. Maybe get a dog. Sounds like a plan.